From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. Children starting school in Georgia this year have another reason to be excited. They are receiving computers they can take home with them. At a public school in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi, children are receiving netbook computers. Educational officials say the children will learn more and develop better computer skills if they can bring the technology home. The hope is that computer technology will become second nature to these children. The Georgian government is paying for the project. It has spent about $5.5 million on 50,000 Georgian-made netbooks. The computers are being made in an algorithm computer factory based in the capital. But the netbook computers are only part of the education upgrade. Georgia is also offering what it calls future classes. They have been opened in 80 schools around the country. These classes are fully equipped with modern technology. There are no pens, pencils, or notebooks. Future classes use interactive smartboards and monitors instead. So students learn and study using this up-to-date technology. Students also can study the electronic version of past lessons without going back through stacks of papers. All future classes are connected to each other digitally, so students can compare work and chat about the subjects they study. The Deputy Minister for Education says the netbooks are not meant to replace school books. She says they just want to give children an up-to-date and relevant education. And she adds that schools need to prepare children for modern-day challenges by exposing them to modern-day technologies. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. South Korea's education system is highly respected, but there are concerns that academic dishonesty could harm its image in the world. That dishonesty includes cases of falsified research. And in recent months, 2 South Korean lawmakers have faced accusations that they copied work for their doctoral dissertations. Of course, problems like these are not limited to South Korea. In April, Hungary's president resigned after a university withdrew his doctoral title. A committee found that most of the pages of his dissertation on the modern Olympics were either direct translations or showed partial similarity to other works. Mr. Kim is a graduate student at Korea University who asked to be identified only by his family name. He attended schools in the United States and says Americans seem to understand that claiming other people's work as their own is wrong. He says Koreans may not yet have a well-established understanding of plagiarism and whether plagiarism is acceptable or not. A VOA reporter asked South Korea's education minister, Lee Ju-ho, how seriously he takes the problem. Mr. Lee said the problem is not as bad as it used to be. Still, he says, he wants to put more effort into eliminating plagiarism. Mr. Kim, the graduate student, says current efforts to educate college students about plagiarism are not very effective. But he says British and American professors who teach at South Korean colleges are helping to fight the problem. For example, he says one professor at his graduate school found a student plagiarizing and automatically gave that student a 0. Ian Ja is a professor of ethics education at Seoul National University of Education. He says the training should start in elementary school. He says children should learn that copying their classmates' homework or not identifying their sources of information is wrong. If they understand that, he says, then they will be able to write honest papers later in life. Michael Neil Shapiro, a Canadian, taught at 7 different South Korean universities. In Korea, he says, there are both ancient and modern reasons for thinking that it's okay to use other people's ideas without giving specific credit. But East or West, he says, one reason for plagiarism is the same: intellectual laziness and the hope not to be discovered. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can learn more about plagiarism and learn English with our stories and activities at voaspecialenglish.com.
Lesson 1. Phrasal verbs for romantic relationships. Let's learn the phrasal verbs from the dialogue. First, Emily says it looked like the guy was hitting on Sarah. To hit on someone is to say or do things that demonstrate romantic or sexual interest in that person. It's usually a combination of comments and gestures, as well as the way you look at the other person. Another way to say this is that the guy was flirting with Sarah. Sarah says the guy asked her out. To ask someone out is to invite the person to go on a date, a romantic encounter. We often say, asked her out for, and then the activity. For example, he asked her out for lunch. He asked her out for dinner. He asked her out for coffee. He asked her out for drinks. He asked her out for a movie. Sarah then says she's not sure if she likes the guy, and she doesn't want to lead him on. This means to provide false hope or expectation to the other person. So, if she pretended to be romantically interested, even though she really wasn't, this would be leading him on. Emily then says that she and her last boyfriend didn't hit it off right away. This means they didn't have a special connection immediately. If you hit it off with someone, it means you like each other and you have great social connection from the first moment you meet. However, with time, she began to fall for him. The phrasal verb fall for means fall in love with. Sarah then asks why Emily and her last boyfriend split up. This means to separate, to end the romantic relationship. You can say split up or break up, and break up as one word can be used as a noun. Emily says that the breakup was because she and her boyfriend drifted apart. This means they slowly started to go in different directions over time. Sarah's last relationship was a nightmare, which means it was really terrible. It started when she hooked up with someone at a party. The phrasal verb hook up with someone can be used as a slang expression meaning to have sex with that person, especially someone you just met or someone you only stay with for one night. However, in Sarah's case, she stayed with the boyfriend for 6 months, when they were constantly fighting and making up. Making up means reconciling and restoring peace in the relationship after a fight. It was a difficult relationship, and Sarah says she doesn't know how she put up with him for so long. The phrasal verb put up with someone means to tolerate a difficult, annoying, or unpleasant person. The relationship ended when the boyfriend cheated on Sarah. That means he was kissing or having sex with another woman. Sarah discovered him making out with his ex-girlfriend. Making out with means he was kissing her very passionately. The boyfriend wanted another chance with Sarah, but Sarah knew he was trying to jerk her around. That means to manipulate her or use her for his own advantage. So she broke up with him. She ended the relationship. Sarah asks Emily if Emily is going out with anyone at the moment. The phrasal verb go out with can mean to go out on a date with someone once, or it can mean to be in a relationship for an extended period of time. In this second case, we usually use it in the present continuous. So Sarah is asking if Emily is currently in a relationship. Emily says she isn't in a serious relationship because she's not interested in settling down yet. In this context, settle down means to be in a long-term, stable relationship. For example, getting married, having kids, and living a typical family life. You've now learned 16 phrasal verbs about romantic relationships. But wait, it's time for the most important part, which is to practice what you've learned. Scroll down to the bottom of this lesson and take the quiz to test how well you remember the phrasal verbs. Then do the writing exercise, where you can practice using the phrasal verbs in your own sentences. If you're already registered for the course, you'll get the next lesson tomorrow. If you're not yet registered, you can click the blue button under the video to join the course and get 29 more lessons on phrasal verbs in conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Lesson 1. Phrasal verbs for romantic relationships. Let's learn the phrasal verbs from the dialogue. First, Emily says it looked like the guy was hitting on Sarah. To hit on someone is to say or do things that demonstrate romantic or sexual interest in that person. It's usually a combination of comments and gestures, as well as the way you look at the other person. Another way to say this is that the guy was flirting with Sarah. Sarah says the guy asked her out. To ask someone out is to invite the person to go on a date, a romantic encounter. We often say, asked her out for, and then the activity. For example, he asked her out for lunch. He asked her out for dinner. He asked her out for coffee. He asked her out for drinks. He asked her out for a movie. Sarah then says she's not sure if she likes the guy, and she doesn't want to lead him on. This means to provide false hope or expectation to the other person. So, if she pretended to be romantically interested even though she really wasn't, this would be leading him on. Emily then says that she and her last boyfriend didn't hit it off right away. This means they didn't have a special connection immediately. If you hit it off with someone, it means you like each other and you have great social connection from the first moment you meet. However, with time, she began to fall for him. The phrasal verb fall for means fall in love with. Sarah then asks why Emily and her last boyfriend split up. This means to separate, to end the romantic relationship. You can say split up or break up, and break up as one word can be used as a noun. Emily says that the breakup was because she and her boyfriend drifted apart. This means they slowly started to go in different directions over time. Sarah's last relationship was a nightmare, which means it was really terrible. It started when she hooked up with someone at a party. The phrasal verb hook up with someone can be used as a slang expression meaning to have sex with that person, especially someone you just met or someone you only stay with for one night. However, in Sarah's case, she stayed with the boyfriend for 6 months, when they were constantly fighting and making up. Making up means reconciling and restoring peace in the relationship after a fight. It was a difficult relationship, and Sarah says she doesn't know how she put up with him for so long. The phrasal verb put up with someone means to tolerate a difficult, annoying, or unpleasant person. The relationship ended when the boyfriend cheated on Sarah. That means he was kissing or having sex with another woman. Sarah discovered him making out with his ex-girlfriend. Making out with means he was kissing her very passionately. The boyfriend wanted another chance with Sarah, but Sarah knew he was trying to jerk her around. That means to manipulate her or use her for his own advantage. So she broke up with him. She ended the relationship. Sarah asks Emily if Emily is going out with anyone at the moment. The phrasal verb go out with can mean to go out on a date with someone once, or it can mean to be in a relationship for an extended period of time. In this second case, we usually use it in the present continuous. So Sarah is asking if Emily is currently in a relationship. Emily says she isn't in a serious relationship because she's not interested in settling down yet. In this context, settle down means to be in a long-term, stable relationship. For example, getting married, having kids, and living a typical family life. You've now learned 16 phrasal verbs about romantic relationships. But wait, it's time for the most important part, which is to practice what you've learned. Scroll down to the bottom of this lesson and take the quiz to test how well you remember the phrasal verbs. Then do the writing exercise, where you can practice using the phrasal verbs in your own sentences. If you're already registered for the course, you'll get the next lesson tomorrow. If you're not yet registered, you can click the blue button under the video to join the course and get 29 more lessons on phrasal verbs in conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Much has been done to improve security in the United States since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Intelligence sharing and cooperation between federal, state, and local government agencies is said to be at an all-time high. There have also been improvements in airport security. But a new report says the United States is not as safe as it should be. It says America is not yet prepared for a truly catastrophic disaster. The report is from the National Security Preparedness Group at the Bipartisan Policy Center. The group is led by former New Jersey Governor Thomas Kean and former Congressman Lee Hamilton of Indiana. The two men also led the 9/11 Commission. Congress established the commission to investigate the hijacking attacks and to make proposals for guarding against future attacks. The new report noted that 9 of the reforms proposed by the Commission have either been carried out ineffectively or completely ignored. For example, the 9/11 Commission found that communication problems were a major issue during the attacks 10 years ago. Police, firefighters, and medical crews had trouble talking to each other because they were using different radio frequencies. Officials said this lack of communication led to needless loss of life. The Commission said the government should identify radio frequencies that would be used only for emergency communications. However, this has yet to be done. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton commented on the report. She said radio frequencies for first responders was an issue she had worked on in the Senate and is long overdue for completion. On another issue, border security, she said, "We have emphasized innovation. For example, we are now using sophisticated new biometric screening tools to improve border security and the visa process." The report praised the deployment of U.S. Visit, a biometric entry system in the United States. The U.S. Visit system uses digital fingerprints and photographic images to identify people entering the United States. The report notes that a similar system for those leaving the country has yet to be established. It says such a system could have helped officials find 2 of the hijackers involved in the 9/11 attacks. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. To read and listen to more stories and to learn English, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Earlier this year, we reported on the growth of massive open online courses, or MOOCs. These higher education courses are mostly free, and so far, largely in technical areas, like computer science. MOOCs are usually open to anyone and can have thousands of students around the world. Entrepreneurs and educators are studying the different business possibilities. One idea is to make money by offering credits or certificates to students willing to pay. Another is to charge employers for connecting them with students who get top scores on online tests. Some top universities are starting to offer their own MOOCs. For example, the University of California, Berkeley recently announced it has joined a nonprofit enterprise called edX. Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology started edX and have each invested $30 million. Berkeley will offer 2 of the 7 free courses on the edX platform: Artificial Intelligence and Software as a Service. Berkeley will also work with edX to get more universities involved. Schools that offer courses on the edX platform will be called X universities. MIT professor Arnott Agarwal is the president of edX, and he helped develop an electrical engineering course for the fall. He says the goal is to reinvent education worldwide and on campus. Berkeley Chancellor Robert Birgeneau made similar comments as he expressed a commitment to excellence in online education. He says the goals are to bring higher education to more people and to enrich the quality of campus-based education. And he added that he believes working with the not-for-profit model of edX is the best way to do that. edX faces for-profit competitors. One is Udacity, co-founded by Sebastian Thrun at Stanford University. Another is Coursera, started by 2 other Stanford computer scientists, Daphne Koller and Andrew Ng. In fact, some Berkeley professors have been teaching free courses through Coursera. Coursera started with 4 universities and in July announced a big expansion. One of the new partners is the University of Virginia. In June, its popular president, Teresa Sullivan, had to resign. The governing board forced her out, in part, over suggestions that she was not moving fast enough into this new world of online education. But 2 weeks later, after campus protests, the board rehired her. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. I'm Carolyn Presutti. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. The United States is suffering its worst drought in almost 60 years. Moderate to extremely dry conditions spread to 55% of the country in June. That was the most since December of 1956. The National Climatic Data Center also said high temperatures in June added to the warmest 12-month period on record. Record keeping began in 1895. The drought map showed that conditions improved in the southeast in June compared to May, but they intensified from the Midwest to the Great Plains and much of the West. Predictions through the end of October suggest that the drought is likely to improve in areas of the Southwest and Southeast. But the drought is expected to continue or intensify in large parts of the country. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack met with President Obama in July. Mr. Vilsack said the drought has severely affected corn and soybean crops. The United States is the world's leading producer of corn and soybeans. Mr. Vilsack said 38% of our corn crop, as of today, is rated as poor to very poor. 30% of our soybeans, poor to very poor. Most of the affected states are in the southern half of the country, but officials said farmlands in the north are now drying up as well. the drought has pushed up prices for corn and soybeans. Both are used in food production and for animal feed. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization reported a 20% jump in maize and wheat prices in the month of July. Wheat prices are up as hot, dry weather affects production in the Black Sea region. In the United States, ranchers may quickly reduce the size of their herds of animals rather than pay higher feed prices to feed them. That increased supply of meat would reduce meat prices in the short term. President Obama has cut the interest rate on disaster loans for farmers and made it easier for affected areas to receive government financial assistance. At the same time, farmers are waiting to see what Congress does with the Farm Bill, a major piece of legislation renewed every 5 years. The Senate has passed a version that would end direct payments to farmers, but help pay for crop insurance. The plan would save money, but the Senate version is different from the legislation in the House of Representatives. And Congress needs to reach a compromise. The current Farm Bill ends at the end of September. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. I'm Carolyn Presutti.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. 2010 was a good year for American farmers. They earned an estimated $82 billion. That is almost 1/3 more than they earned in 2009. And it is 26% higher than the 10-year average. The numbers are from the Economic Research Service at the Department of Agriculture. They represent net farm income, a measure of profitability of farm operations. Values for grain and oilseed crops are up about 3% from 2009. The value of animal production is up by almost 7%. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack points out that agriculture is one of the few major areas of the economy with a trade surplus. A surplus of $41 billion is predicted in 2011. That would be an increase of almost $18 billion from 2010. At the same time, farm exports are expected to break the all-time high set in 2008. The Agriculture Department says exports in 2011 could top $126 billion. The largest buyer of agricultural products is expected to be Canada. But farm exports to China are predicted to come within $500 million of Canadian purchases. Secretary Vilsack says countries in Southeast Asia and the Middle East are also buying more from American farmers. Poor growing conditions overseas played an important part in higher prices for American crops in 2010. Charlotte Hebebrand is chief executive of the International Food and Agricultural Trade Policy Council in Washington. She says drought conditions had a big effect over the summer. Wheat prices rose after Russia halted wheat exports, although Russia later eased the ban. Wheat used to be America's top crop, says economist Charlotte Hebebrand. She says wheat production has actually declined over the past few years because corn has become the most popular crop. Corn, or maize, is mostly fed to animals or made into ethanol fuel and high fructose corn syrup. But Ms. Hebebrand says with the recent increase in wheat prices, American farmers might plant more wheat again. Corn and wheat are the two largest crops supported by the government through subsidy payments. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. A drought across much of the United States is forcing farmers to make difficult decisions. Damage to corn and soybeans is already severe in the hardest hit areas. Alan Bowers Jr. is a farmer in the state of Illinois in the Midwest. He explains the situation this way. You get up in the morning and you think it might be another 13 months before we get a paycheck. The corn and soybean crop is our paycheck. The corn on his farm is so dry the stalks break apart easily. The corn is unusable. So in the middle of July, Alan Bowers decided to cut down his crop to avoid a total loss. He says it can only be used to feed animals. Alan Bowers Jr. and his wife Lori are hoping for a small insurance settlement to help them pay their bills until next year. Lori Bowers says, "People don't realize we have no boss and we have nobody to help us, and it's tough. You have to work together. You have to work with a husband and a wife and family, and together try to work through it." The Bowers could also lose their soybeans to the record high temperatures and lack of rain in the worst drought in more than 50 years. And Alan Bowers says the farm itself may not survive if next year is anything like this. The farm has been in his family for 4 generations. The drought is affecting the Mississippi River, the nation's longest and most economically important waterway. Last year, heavy rains flooded parts of the Mississippi. This year, the level is so low, shipwrecks, normally hidden underwater, can be clearly seen. Jason Brown is a hydraulic engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers. He says the low water hurts farmers who send crops down the river. 60% of all grain exported from the United States travels on barges along the Mississippi. But he adds that other goods like chemicals and coal need to be transported down the Mississippi as well. An Army Corps of Engineers survey ship called the MV Pathfinder looks for places along the river that are not deep enough for traffic. Crews then either dredge the sites to make them deeper or mark them with warning buoys. The ship's captain says companies have to lighten loads of their barges when the water level is low. To read, listen, and learn English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find our captioned videos at the VOA Learning English channel on YouTube. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
I'm Mario Ritter. with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. The United States Department of Agriculture has given farmers permission to plant genetically engineered sugar beets with some conditions. A USDA agency ruled on the most popular variety of Roundup-ready sugar beets. The agency said the genetically engineered sugar beets do not harm the environment or increase threats by pests. The Monsanto company makes Roundup-ready crops. The genetic change in the sugar beets makes them resist the herbicide or weed killer known as Roundup. The action lets growers plant the genetically changed sugar beets if they obey certain rules. The USDA agency expects to finish its full environmental study of the sugar beets by May of next year. Then it will decide if it will permit unlimited planting of the crops. Sugar beets provide about half of America's sugar supply. The government agency had unconditionally approved the genetically engineered sugar beets in 2005. But after legal action, the United States District Court for the Northern District of California canceled the agency's approval last year. The court said the Agriculture Department needed to perform a complete study of the environmental effects of the sugar beets. Jim Greenwood leads the Biotechnology Industry Organization. The group represents more than 1,000 biotechnology companies and other organizations. Mr. Greenwood says the current decision is a reasonable step. He says it lets farmers make planting choices while the environmental statement is being completed. But activist groups for the environment and food safety question the product's safety. They will take legal action in the same federal court that issued the ruling last year. Lawyer Paul Architoff of the organization Earth Justice said he expects to be able to challenge the recent decision before the district court. The Roundup-ready opponents say genetically engineered crops can cross-pollinate and damage other crops. And they say the crops can cause the growth of weeds that resist Roundup. Last year, the United States Supreme Court considered its first case about genetically engineered crops. The court rejected a lower court's decision to ban the sale of genetically engineered alfalfa seeds until the government completed a study of their effects on the environment. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. European Union officials estimate that 20% of all fish are caught illegally. They say honest fishermen and their communities lose as much as $23 billion worth of seafood every year. The European Union and the United States are among the world's largest importers of seafood. In September, they signed a joint agreement in Washington to increase cooperation against fish piracy. The problem is also known as illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, or IUU. Jane Lubchenco, the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, signed the agreement for the United States. Maria Dominaki, The Commissioner for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries signed it for the European Union. They said the European Union and the United States are starting to identify illegal fishing ships and bar them from their ports. Countries are taking measures to document imported fish, they said, and they promised to seek stronger enforcement of fishery management measures. Gerald Leap is Senior Officer for International Policy at the Pew Environment Group in Washington. Mr. Leap says pirate fishing exists only because illegal operators find a place to sell their fish. The pirate fishermen undermine any attempt at achieving sustainable fisheries. They undermine the efforts of those fishermen who are playing by the rules to legally market the fish they catch. Illegal fishing reduces market prices, making it harder for those who follow the law to compete. It can also increase the risk that fisheries will collapse. 3 billion people depend on seafood as their main source of protein. Ms. Lubchenko said the millions of tons of seafood pirated each year may represent as much as 40% of the total catch in some fisheries. The new agreement aims for greater action by governments to prevent illegal operators from making a profit. For example, port officials can prevent them from landing at their ports to sell their catch. Gerald Leap says honest fishermen are not the only ones affected by the actions of fish pirates. They undermine the efforts of scientists to set quotas to make sure that stocks of fish do not go extinct, and they undermine those regulators who are trying to determine who should catch what and how to divide up what should be a sustainably managed catch. These are pirates in the truest sense of the word. They are literally stealing the fish. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. On World Environment Day in June, the United Nations reported that at least 1/3 of all food produced is wasted. The report came at a time when many people are concerned about how to feed a growing world population. In the United States, farmers who are struggling to earn money find the situation difficult to deal with. The United States Department of Agriculture found that more than half of the small farms in California do not make a profit. One California farm family is using social media in an effort to change the situation and reduce wasted food. Nick Papadopoulos is general manager of Bloomfield Farms in Sonoma County. It was difficult for him to watch his employees returning from several weekend farmers markets with top quality, unsold produce. Mr. Papadopoulos said he would find boxes of leafy greens, herbs, and carrots left in a storage area. The vegetables would go bad before the next market day. As a result, Mr. Papadopoulos came up with a plan to offer the food at a low price by advertising it on the farm's Facebook status page on Sunday nights. The deals were open to anyone using the social media website. One week, several homeowners in a neighboring community bought the vegetables. Another week, the buyers were a group of friends. Nick Papadopoulos began using social media after he went to work on a farm belonging to his wife's father. After his success of using Facebook, Mr. Papadopoulos helped to set up a website called cropmobster.com. It is a place where people involved with food production can find surplus food for many causes. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Parsley is an ancient green plant and a respected addition to many foods. But other times, its job is just to make a mealtime plate look pretty. Poor parsley, valued for its looks, then thrown away. Yet parsley is a good source of vitamins and other nutrients. The taste is a little strong for some people, yet others chew on parsley to freshen their breath. Curly parsley is the kind that often ends up being used just for appearance. Many gardeners grow curly parsley as a border for flower beds. Flat-leaf parsley is easier to work with for cooking. This kind is often called Italian or French parsley. Do you know about a third kind of parsley? Hamburg parsley has flat leaves that can be used for the same purposes as other parsley. But Hamburg parsley has a large root, which is used as a vegetable. It can be used to add flavor to soups. Hamburg parsley is popular, not surprisingly, in Germany, home to the city of Hamburg. Parsley is often served with lamb, fish, and beef dishes. It is also used in foods such as tabbouleh, a traditional Lebanese salad. Parsley is an herb if you use just the greens. If the root is used, then parsley is considered a vegetable. Some gardeners suggest that to get the best tasting parsley, you should plant new seeds every year. You can get parsley to grow faster by pouring warm water over the seeds. Leave the seeds in the water overnight. Then you can grow them in containers indoors or plant them outside. Charlie Nardozzi is a writer for the National Gardening Association in the United States. He says parsley grows best when temperatures are under 21 degrees Celsius. In colder climates, parsley can go into the ground 2 to 3 weeks before the last winter freeze is likely to happen. Charlie Nardozzi says parsley likes to grow in sunny places or in partial sun. The seeds need rich, moist soil. Plant the seeds about 15 to 25 centimeters apart. Water regularly during the first month. After that, parsley does not need very much water. Ron Waldrop is a county extension director for the University of Illinois. He says you can harvest parsley by cutting most of the plant, or leave more of the plant in the ground for a second crop. To dry parsley, tie the plant stems together and hang them upside down in a warm, dark, airy place. The leaves should be dry in a week or two. After that, store them in a tightly closed container. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. People might think that beets are always dark red, but this tasty root vegetable also comes in other colors. There are pink, yellow and white beets, and beets with circles of red and white inside. These are known as candy cane or candy stripe beets. Beets are high in nutrients, including folate, iron, and fiber. They can be eaten fresh or frozen, canned or pickled. And not just the root, but also the tops can be eaten. The leaves make good salads when the plants are young, and the greens can be cooked when the plants are older. Beets do not require much work to grow. They like cool temperatures between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius. They grow best in full sun and in loose soil that is not too wet. Remove stones from the soil while preparing the ground and test the soil before adding lime and fertilizer. Some experts say the best fertilizers for beets are low in nitrogen. Beets need the acidity level in the soil to be 6 to 7.5. Beet seeds can be planted as soon as the soil is able to be worked at the start of the growing season. Planting them every 2 or 3 weeks will provide a continuous harvest into the fall. Cindy Haynes at Iowa State University suggests planting the seeds 1 1/4 centimeters deep. They should be planted in rows that are spaced 30 to 46 centimeters apart. Overcrowding the plants will mean that the roots cannot spread out and grow. Thin the beets by removing the smaller ones. These can be used as greens. Cindy Haynes says little or no fertilizer is needed in fertile soils. But once the seeds are planted, she does suggest covering the soil with a little mulch to protect it during rains and dry periods. She also suggests putting a fence around the plants to keep away rabbits and deer. She says the only work needed once beets have been thinned is weeding, and when the weather is dry, a weekly watering. Some people like beets prepared simply in butter. Others like to cook them with cinnamon and ginger. However you like them, for best results, beets should be picked when they are 4 to 5 centimeters across. Beets much larger than that can be tough and have to be cooked for a long time. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. For transcripts, MP3s, podcasts, and captioned videos of our reports, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also share comments and questions.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Goats are valuable not just for their milk and meat.
or for their ability to control weeds and help renew grasslands, or even for their ability to be gentle around children. Goats can also be valuable for their hair. Cashmere goats produce cashmere, and Angora goats produce... Did you think we were going to say Angora? No, Angora fiber comes from rabbits. Angora goats produce mohair. Mohair is used in sweaters, scarves, coats, and other products, including floor coverings and doll hair. The United States is a leading producer of mohair, along with South Africa and Turkey. America's top producing state is Texas. An adult Angora goat can produce as much as 7 kilograms of hair each year. As the goats grow older, however, their hair becomes thicker and less valuable. Hair from white or solid-colored goats is the most popular, but the appeal of mixed-color mohair has grown. Angora goats are also used as show animals. They require little special care. The animals need milk from their mothers for 3 or 4 months. They reach full maturity when they are a little more than 2 years old. But even then, they are smaller than most sheep and milk goats. Cashmere goats are usually larger than Angoras. They can grow big enough to be kept with sheep and cattle. The outer hair of the animal is called guard hair. Behind it is the valuable material on a cashmere goat. Cashmere is valued for its softness and warmth without much weight. Some farmers comb their cashmere goats to remove the hair. But if the animals do get a haircut, it often takes place at the time when they naturally lose their winter coat, between December and March. Angora goats generally get their hair cut 2 times a year, in the spring and fall. The job can be done with simple cutting tools or by hiring a professional shearer. Angoras may need special protection from the cold for about a month after shearing. The value of an animal's coat depends on the age, size, and condition. But whatever kind of goat you choose to raise, be sure you have a good fence. Goats love to explore. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. To learn more about agriculture, go to voaspecialenglish.com for transcripts and MP3s of all of our reports. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. An American intelligence report says water-related problems will likely increase tensions around the world in the next 10 years. These problems include water shortages, poor water quality, and floods. The report says the problems will increase the risk of instability and the failure of governments. However, countries are seen as unlikely to go to war over water. The report says water tensions have historically led to more water-sharing agreements than violent conflicts. But beyond 10 years, it warns that some governments could use water as a weapon to pressure others. And water could also be used to further terrorist objectives. The report is called an intelligence community assessment on global water security. It looks at possible effects of water problems on United States national security interests over the next 30 years. It says the areas that will be most affected by water problems are North Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced the report on World Water Day, which was observed March 24th. The National Intelligence Council wrote the report based on a national intelligence estimate she requested a year ago. The report says water-related problems could distract countries from working with the United States on important policy goals. But it also predicts an increased demand for American aid and expert help to solve those problems. That demand could create opportunities for leadership and influence. The report says water shortages, poor water quality, and floods by themselves are unlikely to result in state failure. But these could combine with poverty, social tensions, environmental problems, poor leadership, and weak governments to produce social disorder. And that combination could cause state failure. The report predicts that from now through 2040, water shortages and pollution probably will harm the economic performance of important trading partners. During the next 10 years, it says, the loss of groundwater supplies in some agricultural areas will create a risk to national and global food markets. These shortages will be a result of poor management. Agriculture uses about 70% of the world's fresh water. The report says technology that reduces the amount of water needed to grow crops will offer the best defense against shortages. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Suppose you eat rice every day, but one day you go to the store and discover that the price is more than you can pay. That happened to millions of people 2 years ago at the height of the world food crisis. Between April of 2007 and March of 2008, the price of rice doubled in many places. Economists blamed the crisis on different causes, including high energy costs, bad weather, and the use of food crop lands for biofuel production. High food prices pushed more people in developing countries into poverty and hunger. Some researchers say people living in cities in West Africa may have suffered most of all. Geographers from 3 American colleges did a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. William Mosley of Macalester College in Minnesota led the study. The team looked at 30 years' worth of information on food security and agricultural policy in Gambia, Ivory Coast, and Mali. Most of the research centered on rice, an important crop in those 3 West African countries. The researchers say Gambia and Ivory Coast suffered more during the food crisis than Mali did. They say this was because people in Gambia and Ivory Coast had come to depend on imported rice. Local rice production fell after the country's reduced farm supports and import taxes under free market reforms. That meant rice farmers were not only earning less, but facing greater competition from imports. Then, when the food crisis hit, the cost of foreign rice shot up. The researchers say Mali suffered less because it depended less on imported rice, in part because of geography. Mali is not a coastal country, with ports like Ivory Coast and Gambia. Lawrence Becker from Oregon State University says, after gaining independence, African nations tried to help farmers. Governments provided low-cost seeds and fertilizers. They built processing mills and roads to market. And they protected their markets with high tariffs on imported food. But by the late 1970s and the 1980s, those countries no longer had much money to help farmers. So they changed policies and tried another way to improve agriculture. Governments and major lenders like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund turned to free market policies. We will talk more next week about how the researchers link that change to the effects of the recent food crisis. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report.